if you're sat at home listening to this and you're struggling from alcoholism or depression or addiction, you never think you'll amount to anything, you never think you're any good, you never think you'll do anything in life, I want to apologize to you guys because somebody's put that there. That's not how we're born. We're born with $1 million minds. Why the fuck are you still hanging around 10-cent minds? And it literally is that easy. What you can visualize in your head, you can't hold in your hand. The only thing that's stopping you from succeeding is you.
All right, well, Dr. Robb, thanks for joining me on Mind Meld. I know that this is not your first Mind Meld podcast. As I was doing some research, I saw you were on another Mind Meld, but I really appreciate you coming on this one and chatting with me today.
No problems. It's going to be awesome, Josh, as we both know. So yeah, looking forward to it.
100%. There's just so much that I really want to get into. So hopefully we can get it all in about an hour and a bit. But I think really just for like the people listening right now, there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to get a lot out of this episode from some things I already know I want to ask you. But I think just before we even get into that, I think it's worth you sharing your story of how you got to now, how you actually became who you are now as a person to help people. And that story is really fascinating from what I've heard. And I'd love for you to kind of share that before we get in so people have a little bit of context around this conversation.
I'm an alcoholic, a chronic alcoholic that I used to be, but I'm now a recovered alcoholic. They call me Dr. Robb, and the addiction doctor is the tagline because I work with addiction and alcoholism. But I took my first drink at the age of 9, grew up on a project, musical family, took my first drink, and the whole world changed for me right there and then. I knew that this alcohol stuff, even at the age of 9, was going to be my hero going through life because I was pretty shy. I didn't really amount to much in school. I played soccer, but not very good. I played rugby, but not very good. And the only thing I could do is play music. So I was the talk of the school whenever I was playing in town. Our mums and dads would come and see us. We played in pubs and clubs around Greater Manchester back in the UK. I grew up, I always wanted to do better, and I never knew why. I was always embarrassed where we lived on the project. So if you listen in England, the council estates. And one of the worst in England as well, the racecourse council estate. And I just didn't want to belong there. I always wanted to better myself. You see, really, I'm supposed to grow up, leave school, no really education, get married, have 2 children, work at the local company, and go for a drink every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. And that was my lot. Do that for 40 years and retire. And I didn't like that. I was like, I don't like this at all. So I've always been, the reason I've done so much in my life is because I seize the opportunity when it comes along. And the reason why I do is because I met an old guy who sat in a bus station. I sat on this chair next to him, waiting for the bus. And he said to me, son, let me give you some advice from this old man. And he said, always take every opportunity and never say no to anything you can do. And that's what I've done. So my drinking was through school. I wanted to go to college. Nobody's been to college in my family. So I joined the Freemasons at the age of 15. I was early, supposed to be 18, but I could play the organ. So they loved my organ playing. And I got some contacts to go to Oxford. I went to Oxford. I graduated with a PhD and I started a small practice in England working with alcoholics because I was intrigued. I was really intrigued that my alcoholism was getting a little bit out of hand, but it wasn't really too much. And then as time went by, I got married. I had 2 children. And then, devastating enough, I lost everything. My youngest daughter still doesn't speak to me all these years on. And then about 15 years ago, I came across to America and I wanted to change the world. I wanted to do as much positive stuff in the world to make a difference. I wanted to leave a legacy. So we set about different things. We're successful and got married again and divorced again in America. And then I lost everything again, walked out and left my wife with everything and started again 8 years ago. And we built an empire in there. And we work with chronic alcoholics and their families. We have to include the family. And I got voted from Harvard University Hospital, McLean Hospital, as one of the best addiction doctors in the USA, which is a pretty high honor for me to say that I come from the council estates. So yeah, that's a rough. I came here for 2 weeks. That's the crazy thing. I came here for 2 weeks to speak and do some lecturing and work with the youth ministry within a big church in Dallas. And the weirdest thing happened because I came with 2 weeks worth of clothes and 2 weeks worth of money. I wasn't really doing well in England. And I came across, and as soon as I stepped on the tarmac, but obviously it was outside, I knew I'd never go back to England to live. I knew that I'd stay here. And that's what I did. Everything fell into my lap to become here today. I mean, and when I mean everything, like 4 or 5 days, maybe, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 days before I was supposed to come to America for the 2 weeks and getting all my stuff out. I'm so excited. I've never been to America before. And I looked at my passport and it was like 3 or 4 days out. It had expired. So I jumped on the bus. I went down to Liverpool, which is 35 miles away. I got to the passport office and I put it in. And the guy said, okay, it'd be between 8 and 12 weeks. And I said, let me expedite it. I need it in a week. And he said, expedite it is going to do it in like a month. You're never going to get your passport in a week, son. You're just not going to do it. So I didn't even pay for it expedite. I just paid normally, and I'll wait 12 weeks. 5 days later or 6 days later, there's a knock on my door and they delivered my passport. And that gave me the right to come here. And that's what started all this crazy spiritual journey that I've been on.
Wow. So where are you based out of now?
I'm actually in San Antonio. We started in Dallas. So I'm in San Antonio at the head office. We have 4 or 5 locations around the world. We have San Antonio, we have Dallas, we have Spain, we have Switzerland, we have 2 offices in England.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, no kidding.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah. Talk about an empire, man. That's amazing. So I love talking to people with these kind of stories and these journeys. Like you're still writing the story as you're going. Like you're kind of in the thick of what you're meant to be doing, what it seems. You know, you had this tough time earlier on in life while you're still in England that has obviously influenced what you're doing now and the people you're helping now. What I would love to kind of bring up is kind of your past life before becoming an addiction treatment specialist. And that's in your music career. We talked about this before. I'd love for you to kind of talk about that because I feel like that might have influenced kind of the people that you're helping now. And I want to get into the types of people that you might be working with nowadays.
So I've always been musical. I picked up the guitar at the age of 4 or 5 and I could play it. Never taken a lesson in my life. I can play any instrument. Somebody gave me bagpipes once as a joke, and within 10 minutes I could play a tune. I'm not saying I was great, but I can play a tune. That's just my forte. People can decorate, build houses. Can't do that. Mechanic, I have no idea what's under the hood, but I can play music. So at the early age, I was on stage, and then I discovered that this place, it's in Stockport, about 15 miles outside Manchester, was a recording studio. And it was owned by 10cc, the group 10cc. I think they had 1-2 hits over here. And I went there as a session bass player. Now, we would play bass tracks on commercials for TV and radio. And when I did it, they gave me money for it, but they didn't just give me money. It was an extortionate amount of money for what I just did. Because I could sight read. I didn't have to spend 20 minutes going through. Put it in front of me, I play the bass track. Someone would shout, the producer go, that's awesome. I'd go out and give me like £100 or something. It was ridiculous. So I did that heavily. Always wanted to be a famous musician. But it didn't happen for me. And just before I ever thought about going to college, Melody Maker was a newspaper in England. And I saw a advertisement for a bass player at Abbey Road, the famous Abbey Road, where everybody use anybody has recorded it. But the most famous band is the Beatles, obviously recorded there. So I applied for it. I had 7 interviews. I gained some of the best bass players, I guess, in England. I don't know. They were all seasoned players. And there's me, 15, 16 years old, trying out. But my confidence regarding music was very high. You know, I was a kid, just didn't have any fear of anything. So after starting, I got the job. And, I played with David Bowie, Elton John, Queen, Freddie Mercury, all them great guys. I've put tracks on their songs during that time I was there. I was there about 2 or 3 years, I think. But fortunately, that was a great time. Me and Freddie used to spend hours and hours in the early morning in the green room or something, just chatting away and philosophy and putting the worlds to right. But the bad side of it is during that time, I got heavily into the alcohol and cocaine. The first time I took cocaine and stopped drinking, it was just like, it was phenomenal. I could go to school during the day and I could work at Abbey Road during the night and sleep all weekend. So yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, I'm imagining that you have some pretty crazy stories about some of the people you've worked there. Do you have any that comes to mind?
I have one about Elton John. It was crazy. We're recording one night and it was really bad weather. It was storming, it was thunder, lightning, rain, everything. And the generator kept kicking off and kicking on, the backup generator, and we kind of lost a few tracks. So Elton called it and said, hey, let's go back to the hotel. Now, we went back to the Savoy Hotel. Now, you got to remember, late 70s, early 80s, the Savoy Hotel was one of the best hotels in the world. 5-star, elegance all the way. So we get up to the penthouse suite, and with those girls there, there's a few guys there, there's Elton, there's drinks, there's everything else you can imagine for the partaking of, which we did. There's music playing. There's a huge suite about the top of the hotel. And then I heard Elton in the bedroom screaming at somebody or something. So I walked in and he's on the telephone. And I'm like, who's he talking to? And as I got nearer to him, he was actually screaming at the manager of the hotel, telling them that if he didn't stop the rain and the wind immediately, that he would never book into that hotel again. And it was right there and then I thought, oh my God, I'm part of this crazy world. And I've kind of been in that crazy world ever since, to be honest, because I live life the way it's supposed to be lived. I don't follow the rules. We got married to my third and final wife, in case she's listening. And we had an argument after 2 or 3 days. And I said, I don't like this. And she said, well, that's the way marriage is supposed to be. And I said who? Who's making these rules? I don't fucking like these rules. Let's change it. So we dance in the bathroom in the morning. We throw stuff at us. She'll be in here shortly, squirting water or something to make me laugh. Or, we do crazy stuff because we make our own life up. Nobody's going to come to rescue me. I found that at an early age. No one's going to knock on the door and rescue me. I'm all alone here. I have a God in my life, a spiritual God, and I have all these great people around me who lift me up. And there's this thing as well. I always tell people, if you're sat at home listening to this and you're struggling from alcoholism or depression or addiction, you never think you amount to anything, you never think you're any good, you never think you'll do anything in life, I want to apologize to you guys because somebody's put that there. That's not how we're born. We're born with $1 million minds. Why the fuck are you still hanging around 10-cent minds? And it literally is that easy. Oh, it can't be that. No, what you can visualize in your head, you can hold in your hand. The only thing that's stopping you from succeeding is you. Especially if you suffer from addiction, self-sabotaging neural pathways will take us down. And an internal dialogue, oh God, I can't do that. Says who? Says who? The only difference between a guy trying to make it and the guy at CEO in front of a multi-billion-dollar company is he believes he can do it. We're not even talking about college or education. That doesn't go very far today. Look at Apple, look at Google, look at all these great Amazon, look at all these great companies that don't need a college degree to get in. The 2021 and 2022 are the finest years we could ever have right now of earning maximum potential. And I'll tell somebody, look, if you're thinking, well, I can do this, I want to do this, do me a favor. Get your checkbook out right now and write on it that number that you want to go into your bank account. Mine was $1 million, by the way. When I did it back in the day, it was $1 million. I cashed that $1 million about 5 years ago. My first $1 million in the bank. Write down. It could be 50 grand, it could be 100 grand. Write it down on a check and sign it and stick it on the bathroom mirror so you'll see it every day. And you will do it. I promise you'll do it.
See, I know already just from even this, there's going to be so many of these little strategies and tactics that I would really like to extract here for the people listening, whether they are struggling with addiction themselves or they know someone, or, they're just kind of in this kind of like negative mindset. They're kind of like maybe just experiencing depression, or maybe they're just like, they're not really living their true life. There's so much out here. They don't even know that it exists, right? They're kind of trapped in this little bubble, this little shitstorm. How do you get people out of that? Like, how do you get people to first recognize that they can do this stuff and believe they can?
Always remember that we never see ourselves as we are. So you see other people go, God, he's doing great. He doesn't know he's doing great. You look at the guy just bought a new car, just done this, got an amazing girlfriend. Ask him, how you doing? I'm doing okay. You confident? Well, a little bit. Things are looking up. Nobody knows. It's getting with somebody who will tell you the truth and the realization that you are amazing and you are worth it and you can do this. Everyone has a niche in life. Everyone's been brought on this earth to do something. Find out what your niche is. If it's football, go and be a professional footballer. Well, it can't be that easy. It literally is. Hang around the people. If you're sat at home and earning $40,000 a year, start hanging around the guys that earn 60, and you'll soon earn 60. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. The only difference between alcoholism, trauma, and depression and all that is trauma. Alcoholism is not about the alcohol, and drug addiction is not about the drugs. And depression is not about sit there crying because you can't stand the world anymore. It's all to do with trauma. Once you go back and fix that trauma and find out who the hell you are and hang around them people who tell you who the hell you are. Because my circle, if anybody, tries to pull me down, they're out. I don't need that stuff. Even after all these years in recovery, a negative mind will take hold of it and run. And I'll give you an example. I was speaking in California once, and there was 1,000 people booked to go in. And 1,000 people was there, and I did a talk for about 2 hours, and I come off stage, and my manager said, at the end of the talk, you've got to give at least 1 to 2 hours. Everybody will shake your hand, and tell you great job. And 999 people said I was amazing. And one person said you were shit. For the next 2 or 3 weeks, I concentrate on that one person instead of the 999. That's the way our minds work, especially if you suffer from any mental injury.
Why is that? Why do you think that is? It's so true. We can have a million things going on, right?
Yeah. Self-sabotaging neural pathways from trauma. If you put a white piece of paper up and with a black spot on it and say, what can you see? Everyone's going to say the black spot. That's how the mind goes. We very rarely take compliments. We can't do that. Oh, nice shirt. Oh, it's just something to throw on. Oh, nice shoes. Oh, yeah. How about just saying thank you? That's a confidence builder. And when you start complimenting people, dopamine is released into your brain. That's a good feeling. And when you compliment people, people will compliment you back. And try little things. Set your mind to something. Well, I can't go and run a multi-billion-dollar company now. No, you probably can't. But what about next month or the month after or the year after? So make them little things and try yourself out. That job that I was going to do part-time. Let's see if I can get it. Walk in there. Listen, I'm going to tell you something now that's going to blow your mind, guys. Listen at home. Quantum physics. Let's talk about quantum physics for a second. Let's say a basketball court. Quantum physics tells me that I can be 25 places at the same time on that court because nothing's really solid, guys. 25 places. Now visualize that for a second. 25 places I can be on that court. Where do I want to be? Well, obviously I want to be over near the goal. So when I get the ball, I'll slam it into the net and I'll be the hero of the game. Okay, listen up, guys. How do I get there? You walk over and you take that position. You don't beg for it. You don't plead for it. You walk over and you take it. Because what you can visualize here, you can hold here. The oldest secret of mankind is once you have belief in oneself, there's nothing you can't achieve. And I really mean that. And people used to say to me, yeah, but I can't be president of the United States. Really? I beg to differ today because we had a businessman. Whatever your political sides and views are, at the end of the day, we had a businessman running the country. So don't tell me you can't do this. It's bullshit. It's that self-sabotaging part of the brain going, you're never good enough. I came to this conclusion years ago. I'm never going to be blonde enough, tall enough, thin enough, or rich enough. That's just the way my mind works. And once I decided that and put that away, everything else was like cream on top. You are worth it. You are amazing. You can do whatever you want to do. You can date that girl, get that car, get that house, get that job. You can do it. Just spend some time every morning. Focuses on you. Do the 10 I love yous face to face in the mirror every single morning because that sets the subconscious brain storing them I love yous. So when you get to that job, that car, that house, that girl, instead of your brain going, oh, fuck, I don't think I can do this, over it comes to the prefrontal cortex. I love you. You're amazing. You can walk this. And then walk in and fucking take the position, guys. That's all there is to it. Don't be on the outside looking in. Many years ago, I used to drive a taxi for my dad. I used to pick up these guys from these really posh hotels and just dream, because I didn't come from that. There's no way could our family do anything like that. But I'm going to England in a couple of weeks' time, 10 days' time, and we're staying in one of the most exclusive hotels that in Manchester. That was my goal. It's taken 30 odd years to achieve, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it. And my life is absolutely amazing. I mean, I have everything a man wants and everything a man needs. And my only aim now, because we give 25% of our earnings. So this year alone, sorry, I keep saying last year, this year alone, probably 220, we counted today, 220 we give away, $220,000 to the needy, to the homeless, to the addicts that want to get their life back, get the kids back, go to court. We spend active like that, and my primary purpose today is proving to the other person that you can do this.
That's incredible. And for you, like, what was that like awakening moment? Like you're talking about spirituality here as well. I'm a very spiritual person as well. I love to kind of spread that. A lot of people aren't. They're very stuck in like the material world. This is how things are. This is how my life just is. And you kind of even just, scratch the surface there of like quantum physics and spirituality. How did you first come into that? How did you first like originally have that awakening moment? Was there something that happened, or was it like over time?
It was sudden to me because I'd grown up in the church, but my choir master, stroke headmaster, molested me a few times. It didn't register till later on. So I wasn't a church God person. I'm never going to go there. I've never been to church since. In the last 50 something years, I've never been back to church, but I was homeless. It got that bad that everything was stripped off me. My wife left. They took my two little babies, age 1 and 3. The house was foreclosed on. The cars went back. And I ended up homeless after about 2 or 3 weeks of something really bad happening. I was sat on the streets of Manchester going, wow, what just went wrong? And I stayed there for 14 months, begging, beating people up, drinking all day, passing out. It was a crazy, but about 14 months around that area, I tried suicide 6 times, and on 2 occasions it worked, but they brought me back to life. My heart actually stopped, and the paramedics brought me back. I was pissed at them guys for a long time because I didn't want to live anymore. So I'm walking around the back ends of Manchester where nobody goes, cobbled streets, like it's pitch black. And I dropped down to my hands and knees, and I started to cry like a baby, from the stomach. There's a different cry, 2 cries. One from here when you're upset, but one from your stomach when you get that loss, that grieving, that horrible pain in your stomach. And so when I got down, I was looking down to the floor on my hands and knees, and my tears were hitting the cobblestones. So the rain was hitting me in the back of the head. It was coming around my face, and it was dripping and making purple colors on the floor, and I was sobbing. So the crazy thing is I wasn't sobbing because I lost my wife, my kids, my money, my houses, anything. I was crying because the first time in my life I realized I couldn't stop drinking. And he took all that for me. And I looked up to the sky and I said, if there's a God up there, I can't do this on my own anymore. 30 seconds later, a guy walked around the corner in the middle of nowhere with a Bible in his hand. He'd missed his last bus home from the Bible study. He'd been walking an hour. He passes me and he says, hey, mate, do you want help? And I said, yeah, I'm an alcoholic and I'm dying. And he said, I'm an alcoholic in recovery, man. Come back to the house. So I went back to the house, and his name was Derek. And he said, Rob, you can stay here for as long as you like till you get your life together, but there's only one condition. I said, okay, what's the condition? He said, you've got to come to AA meetings with me, which I hated them places. They're just full of bullshit and war stories. So I agreed because it was a dry bed. And the next night he took me to this meeting, and my only aim was trying to get out of there without him knowing and get some vodka and get back into the meeting, but it didn't happen. And when about halfway through the meeting, this guy across from me, with a white beard, white hair, quite, loosely but smartly dressed. He said, my name's John and I'm a recovered alcoholic. I was intrigued what stuff he was pointing out in the book. And he talked about God a lot. So after the meeting, I went over to him, and this should have been a sign, but it wasn't. I didn't know it was a sign. I said, hey, John, my name's Rob. Will you sponsor me? And he said, no, but I will be a spiritual advisor for a period of 12 weeks. And I thought, okay, that's weird. He said, come to my address, bring a big book and a dictionary. And he says, don't worry about a dictionary. I went to Oxford. He said, bring a dictionary. So I did. Every Wednesday evening, I walked an hour to that man's house. We spent an hour together, and I walked an hour back for 12 weeks. After the last visit, I knew I would never drink alcohol again if I continued to follow the program. He said, your life's going to change. I said, it can't change, John. I'm living in a guy's basement. Nobody knows I'm there. How can my life change? The next day, I got a part-time job offered to me. Later that week, it turned into a full-time job. The week after, mixing with everybody, someone gave me a mini car to get to work and back. And things were starting to happen. I was going into meetings with this big book and I was preaching and teaching, and it was amazing. People getting well in short time. So after 2 or 3 weeks, I got my first pay packet. I went to the local petrol station, gas station, and I bought John a little teddy bear this big. That's all I could afford. And a little card, and I wrote on it, "Thank you for introducing me to God. He took the compulsion away." And I walked back to his house. When I got there, these looks like there was nobody there. I was banging on the door, and the right-hand neighbor come out and says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Can you tell me where John's moved to?" And she said, "John, you've got the wrong apartment. Nobody's been in that apartment for at least 6 months that I know of, that I've been here." So I let her close the door, obviously, a bit loopy. So I went to the left-hand side and knocked on his apartment, and the guy comes to the door and I said, "Can you tell me where John relocated to?" And he said, "John." And I'm like, "Fuck, yeah, why do everyone keep saying John?" He said, "Look, mate, I don't know where you've been or what you've done, but that apartment is derelict. No one's lived there for 12 months. You can't go in there. It's dangerous." I'm really confused now because I've got the right house and I knew this guy. So I went back the next night to the meeting that I first met him some weeks ago. And I said to the chairman, "Hey, you remember that John guy?" And he went, "John." I'm like, "Fuck, here we go again." I said, "The guy that was in the meeting said he was a recovered alcoholic. And then we went over to the coffee machine and I asked him to sponsor me, that John." And somebody sniggered, Josh, over my shoulder. And I turned around and I grabbed him by the scruff of the neck. I said, "Don't you ever laugh at me." And the guys pulled me off and he said, Rob, stop. You don't understand, Rob. You was over in the coffee machine talking to yourself." Never found that man. No one's ever heard of him. No one's ever found. But he showed me a program that I mixed with psychology today that have a 97% success rate.
Whoa.
That's how powerful that is. So that's where my journey started. It was like, I have to have a spiritual awakening and a psychic change in the Alcoholics Anonymous I belong to. And when my research shows us that when them two happen, our DNA changes.
Really? How does that work?
Right? Yes.
What's the detail?
Well, it works with the spiritual and the psychic and the changing of the energy around you, and it changes. Google it. It changes. It's ever so slightly, but it changes, which means that after I do my work, my steps, all that stuff, then I'm not the same man as I was before, because that book says same man will drink again. I didn't want to drink again, and that's where my spiritual journey, and I'm very big on the spiritual side, very big. I mean, there's 26,000 gods in the world. Just fucking pick one. I get these guys, "Oh, I can't believe in God." I have trust issues, especially with women. I have trusted. Listen, girl, I saw you last night getting a flipping car with 3 drug dealers. Don't fucking talk to me about fucking, trust issues. That's bullshit. Just get the God in your life. You can choose any conception. Just get a God. It can't be a tree, it can't be a room, it can't be people, and move this shit forward, because life is for living. I went to bed last night, Josh. I was 19. I got up this morning and I was 60. That's how fast life goes.
It's crazy how the mind works that way, right? Like, I've totally done that kind of time travel. I'm pretty sure I was just in high school like yesterday. What just happened?
Yeah. It travels so quickly. When you got fathers or mothers that are listening, watch your children grow. 1 minute they're at kindergarten, next minute they're in high school, next minute they've gone through college, and you're going, where's that time? I should have spent more time with them. That is one day at a time. That is stopping today and playing with my dog, hugging my wife, complimenting people, calling random people up and asking them how the day's going. Stopping celebrities whenever I see them and go, "Hey, how are you?" You go, "Oh, I'm fine." No. How are you? It blows their mind. It's like nobody's really asked me that. We don't do that as people. Then when COVID set in, we all isolated and became images on screens. People say, "Hey, Rob, I've got loads of friends. I've got like 5,000 friends on Facebook." No, what you're doing, Sonny, is you're plugged into the fucking wall. That's what you're doing. They're not friends. They're not what we're born for. We're social animals. Unless we have that, we will crazily go insane. The study's been done on death row about isolation, and something like 90-something% of people on death row that get to the chamber are insane by the time they get there. Because the isolation, they don't see anybody, they don't speak to anybody, and the darkness and the silence over a period of many years starts to get you into a place where you can't come back from.
Yeah, and that's very tough. I mean, you brought up the whole COVID thing right now, especially where I am in Canada. There's still some pretty tough regulations and, numbers coming up. Like, I even have family members who, they refuse to go have family time. They refuse to go and meet up with people because they're scared of catching this virus, and it's further keeping them in isolation. It's really tough.
It is very, very tough. And in isolation with my industry, who kills people. Literally over the last 12 months in Texas, you can only speak about Texas, alcohol sales went up by 72%. Divorces went up by 43%. Deaths or murders went up by 26%. It's all a reflection of isolation. That's what's caused it all. We know we're in a bad place where an essential business is a liquor store. There's something wrong there with our society.
It's messed up. And I want to bring this back around because the last guest I had on the podcast, I'm guessing by the time this comes out, that episode would be out as well. It's with Keegan Downer, the co-founder, well, I guess main founder of Mindful Meds. And he went through a similar journey with alcoholism and addiction. And what helped him was psychedelics. It was microdosing psilocybin and eventually doing some macro doses. And he used that to build out his company and bring that to the world for other people. So I want to know what your thoughts are on psychedelics too, because it's also very non-addictive. He talked about that in depth in the episode, but also just from the spiritual standpoint. If you've read the book, I believe it's How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. He talks about how many people who have a macro dose of psychedelics, psilocybin specifically, have a spiritual experience. And what happens is it just shuts down the default mode network, and that can trigger like a spiritual experience. So you talked about there's like 26,000 gods, probably way more. Like there's millions of gods, but like, people can have their own personal spiritual experience with this medicine. I don't even want to call it a drug. Like it's the Native Americans will get actually mad at you if you call it a drug. It's medicine, right? So I'm wondering what your stance is on that, and if you've ever used that as part of recovery methods.
The answer is no, we've never used it, and we've been against it with pure alcoholics, chronic alcoholics. But you have to really get into a deep conversation about that to understand, because what happens with psychedelics and stuff like that is a part of the brain called the basal ganglia. It's our repetition part of the brain. And when you're born with alcoholism, so alcohol will always be a problem to somebody who's born whenever they first take it. And what happens with any addiction is the basal ganglia it goes round and round, and repetition strengthens and confirms all the time. So if you try to get sober for a bit and don't do any work on yourself, you're going to fall back because the brain's telling you. That's also tied to the hypothalamus. Now the hypothalamus is at the base towards the back a little bit. The hypothalamus has a couple of jobs to do, but one of it is a fight or flight. It'll tell you about, what to do to stay alive. So it tells a normal human being to drink water and eat food. Now, with alcoholics, once you crossed over the line from heavy drinking to alcoholism, it tells the alcoholic to drink alcohol. And that's why you can see alcoholics going days, even weeks without water or food. So what the psychedelics does is it breaks that chain in the basal ganglia, and it breaks that communication from the hypothalamus to the prefrontal cortex. So we don't actually know what happens there, but there's certain neurons and energy firing in the brain that 9 out of 10 people have this spiritual awakening. But you just have to be careful, because if it's used on alcoholics, is it good? Is it bad? We don't know, because it's not about the alcohol. It's not about the drugs. Most people think alcoholism is somebody who drinks too much alcohol. Alcohol is 1% of alcoholism. It comes from the trauma in the past. Now, if something like this could be taken to cause a spiritual awakening, a belief in something bigger than yourself, and then brave enough to go back and clear the wreckage from the past, go back to the scene of the crime and clear that up, it can only be a good thing. But we've always been against it because there's been never solid research behind it that says, hey, if we do this, this could possibly happen, because it could possibly happen. There's never been full studies. But, it's like weed. I've never seen anybody on weed stab somebody, kill somebody in a car, shoot somebody. It's a different chemical altogether. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Many people say to me, hey, is cannabis, is weed, that's a gateway drug, yeah, Rob? And I go, no, trauma is the gateway drug. The actual substance got nothing to do with it. It's the symptom of any disease that you get regarding addiction. The gym is the symptom. The sex is the symptom. The porn, the food, that's a symptom. What's actually going on in the brain? So we can put that chemical inside us, and it mixes to break signals and take us in a different direction, which is a direction you should always be meaning to go anyway. But this disease messes all that up. It remaps the brains of self-sabotaging neural pathways. And that's why I could get really good at something. I get that job, and then I go for a manager's job. I get that. And then all of a sudden I'll go on a spree, and I'll bring everything down on my head because it's self-sabotaging your pathways. And the only way to get around that is to solidify self-care neural pathways. And again, going back to repetition, strengthen, and confirm. So again, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know, but I've seen both sides of it, and I would be willing to look into that in years to come, I think.
Yes, I definitely see that being a really big point for a lot of research to do. At least in Canada. In Canada, there's a lot of research being done there. I'm trying to stay on top of that because it's really interesting to me. It really just from what I've seen and what I've spoken to some people about, it just seems like it's like not a magic pill by any means, but it sort of just feels like it's that tool that the mental health industry needs. Or no, have you done any psychedelics? Something that you want to talk about? If you had experience with that?
No, definitely not. During my time, it was all alcohol and then cocaine when I was at Abbey Road, and then heroin grabbed the area I was living in. And I was lucky enough to go to college down in Oxford, so I missed that, but it was mainly heroin. All my friends I went to school with are dead. All my colleagues, all my, just people that I know of, they're dead because heroin hit the council estate really bad and everybody was on it. And I kind of think if I would have stayed there, I would be dead as well, because I would have definitely done something like that back in the day. So there's been a lot of scrapes for me on the way that I've got by. And at first, you can only have so many scrapes, or wow, that was lucky. Oh God, I'm glad I got out of that, before you stop believing that this is not coincidence.
How many times does it take before you realize, oh, it's not a coincidence? There's something bigger here, pulling me along this path?
Always. That your path is already made out. So if you're again sat at home, depressed, got no job, don't know what to do, it's pouring outside, you're pissed off, you can't drink, blah 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 blah, this will pass. It's not temporary. It's temporary. Sorry, nothing is forever. Everything's temporary. So when the guys that do suicide and we talk them out of it, we tell them, that's just an absolute permanent decision you're making for a temporary problem that you can handle in life. Doesn't matter what it is. Once you get your head clear and start then self-care, confident, I can do anything neural pathways, then the body follows. It's amazing what we can do. So there was a guy many years ago back in Manchester. He drove a heavy goods vehicle back in Manchester, which over here, I think they call it a 16-wheeler, with a refrigerated part on the back. And he was loading or unloading some stuff for the refrigerator. And then he went for coffee and he came back. And as he was checking the back of the refrigerator, which is defrosted by now because the doors were open, somehow the doors got slammed with the wind and he was locked inside. And he was banging and screaming because he knew he'd freeze to death if he stayed in there. And he screamed and he banged and he got a note and he says, I am dying from hypothermia. If I don't live, say, I love you to my wife. And he wrote this little note. When somebody finally found him and traced him back, they opened the doors and he had frozen to death from hypothermia and the freezing cold. But the funny thing is, it was 63 degrees in that trailer and had been when he stepped into it. So his brain told him he was going to die of hypothermia that strongly that he believed that he did. His body was frozen. And yet it was 63, 64 degrees in that part. So that's how powerful the brain can be. If I tell you you can do something, you might believe it, you might not. But at the end of the day, if you believe it enough, you can do it. That's how powerful the brain is. We only know like 6 or 7% of what the brain's capable of doing. It's capable of doing much more when you start taking the blinkers off life and you look around and you go, wow, do you think I could do that? I'm still pushing it. I always say, let's push the envelope. Why? What are you going to do? Oh, I did $3 million this year. Let's see if we can get away with it. Let's see if we can push this even further. Bang. We did it. Okay, what's my next thing to do? See, the more money I earn, the more money I can give away. That's what it comes down to. I always carry $300 or $400 in my wallet at any time because I'm just crazy. I stop somewhere, I'm filling gas, and the woman behind me got 5 kids in the car. She's trying to squeeze out $10. Fill it up. There's $100 for the kids. There's $100 for the shopping. It's like give it away. It's not mine. It's God's money. When I say God, I don't mean the Catholic, Hindu. I call it God. Somebody's looking after me. It's not my money. It's His. And I'll tell you something in life. You'll never go broke by giving away. That old man told me that on the bench outside school, and it's been so true. when you give it the right reason, because we stop at the signal lights. Even today, and a guy will come up and I'll give him $20. And my friend next to me said, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You know what they're going to do with it. And my answer is, I hope they go and buy drugs or alcohol with it, because that's what I would have been doing if I was on the streets. What he does with that is not my concern. My concern is giving. What he does with it is, that's not my job. My job is done when the money's taken out of my hand and I can walk away saying, I tried and did my best, because that's all I want to do in life. Is I want to do my best and leave a legacy going, that guy worked with as many people as he could and he was a good guy.
That's awesome. That actually really warms my heart to hear, because a lot of people, like you said, would just be like, no, don't give them any money, because you know what they're going to do with it. And that comes down to like the enablement kind of thing, right? And actually one thing, this might kind of tie in well. One question I had for you was about these sort of safe injection sites, right? For heroin and whatever else they're doing, because a little backstory, when I was at university in Toronto at Ryerson, like the core of the city is basically like the Canadian Times Square. Our university campus is right there. You have to come out of the subway and then you go around this corner to get to the campus. But on that corner is the safe injection site in Toronto, like the main one. So all these kids going to school, they're just seeing people strung out. They're just getting their fix. They're getting shot up. And I've seen so many people just shooting up around there while I was going to school. And then there's a lot of people saying like, oh, they're enabling it. Like, why would they allow them to do it? But I think there's reasons for it, for them to be able to do it safely. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that and why it might be actually a beneficial thing, or maybe it shouldn't be, if that should not be part of like this sort of recovery system. I just want to know from your side what you think about that whole thing.
But if you Google that, injection sites, my name and the doctors, I did an episode on the doctors where we spoke exclusively on that. And I've done my homework and data. And there's a couple of obviously positive and there's a couple of negative. But at the end of the day, they're going to do it anyway. You want your kid to stumble on a needle, pick it up and get AIDS, or do you want them to safely dispose of the needles? I mean, the site outside is not good, but it may get somebody to go, well, fuck that. I never want to be like that, So is it good? Is it bad again? Well, only time will tell. But I know they started a few locations after I broadcast that episode, because everybody wants to look down on the drug and alcoholic. And the more we go into 21, 22 with the isolation, and families are really finding out, because everybody knows somebody. And if you don't, it's probably you. When you start finding out in the family they've got problems, their heart turns and softens a little bit. Because we're not talking about drug addicts, down and out, no good at school. We're talking about professors. We're talking about doctors. We're talking about teenagers. We're talking about business owners. These are the guys that end up on that stuff. Housewives. We started in 99 or 98% of heroin addicts that come to see me started in the doctor's office with pain meds. So that's pretty heavy. So we need to stop looking down these people and going, hey, is it good? Is it bad? We just need to realize that, we're not helping them. We're not enabling them. What we're actually doing is looking at a better way to keep them off the streets for a while they do this act.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's the way to go forward. Because I know there's a lot of programs out there where they just, when people are seeking recovery, they're just going to completely take them away from the outside world, take them away from all substances. Is that what you do when you work with someone? What is like that process if someone comes to you and you decide like you can work with them? And maybe even back it up a bit. Just like, how do you even decide to work with someone? And then what does that process look like when you do start to work with them?
Well, they have with us. The reason why we have such a high success rate of about 97% is they have to pass an assessment. And if they can prove to me that they're going to do the work and they really want this, then we'll take them on. Now, 95% of our work is telehealth, because what we found as well, we was doing telehealth 8 years ago. So we're not like overnight with a telehealth provider. It doesn't work like that. I got a second PhD in behavioral science to become a telehealth provider, because whatever you've seen on the screen, you can tell. People get well in their own environment. They feel more comfortable. You can get to somebody quicker in your own environment. So that's what we find treats it. Sticking somebody in a treatment center for 30 days doesn't work. Shielding them from drugs and alcohol does not work. If the psychic changing neural pathways doesn't happen, the education and also the spiritual awakening, you will relapse if you're a real alcoholic and drug addict. Now, there's some great treatment centers out there that we like that are doing it right. I'm not saying them, but there's about 78, 79% of treatment centers who's in this for the money. So why this is what we do. That they will take little Johnny back for the fourth and fifth time in the same treatment center, charging him $30,000 every time he comes back. And my message and note to you guys is shame on you. Shame on you. We're the only company in the world that offers a money back guarantee. So if you follow my program, if you follow it to the T and you relapse, I will refund your money to either you or your parents. That's how serious we are. I'm the guy that turned down Britney Spears in a restaurant in Dallas because she wasn't ready to do this program. And she came to me drunk after a concert in Dallas. So the whole restaurant was closed down just for her to meet me. And her dad, Jamie, took a check out because I said, I can't work with her, Jamie, I'm sorry. And he wrote $1 million on it and he said, cash that tomorrow. Dr. Robb, just work with her. And I said, no, I can't do that. That's not true to my nature. And I'd be just taking your money, even though I could have really done with that $1 million, but I couldn't take it. 2 days later, she's in the papers, shaving her head off and everything. You've got to be careful. It's something that I have inside me that can tell within seconds if the guy's or girl's being serious.
Wow. So for people listening, and even for myself, how would you know, if someone's, going through addiction? Like you said, a lot of people do this in the dark almost. It's like your friends, family who are like doing this in the dark. How can you actually tell that they're going through this, and how can you maybe help? So like I have family, like maybe not hardcore addictions, but even like smoking cigarettes, like that's a very addictive thing with the nicotine and, the way that whole industry is set up. How can we help our loved ones kind of get through this? Like, what are some steps that we can look for, some things that we can maybe help them out with?
So whether it's drugs, alcohol, or anything else that's going on in the house, especially with sons and daughters, even in the 20s and 30s, two biggest things, isolation, when they go up to the bedroom and won't come out, even for dinner. They used to come down for dinner every night, now they don't. Watch for that. Unkempt, not shaven, yesterday's clothes on. Look out for that. Plenty of sleeping. Look out for behavior changes. There'll be patterns there all over the place. Alcohol or addiction never comes on Monday and goes, hey, Rob, let's have a drink. It's a week or two before when my behavior changes, when my traits change. Look for them. And the biggest advice I can give anybody is dialogue. Start dialogue with these guys. If it's your son, have that talk. Because nobody had that talk with me. Josh, nobody. If my parents would have sat me down at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9 and said, hey, there's this thing called alcoholism in the family, and most of our families suffer from it, I might have took a different route. So how old should you be? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You choose of your own child and the maturity. But they need to know that alcohol is not necessarily good because it skips generations. I'd hate to somebody think there was an alcoholic and there wasn't, because alcohol brings so much joy to people. It's amazing. But just have that conversation, dialogue. And this is what we always say as well. It's like, we always put our money where our mouth is. It's like, if you're struggling at home, if you're a parent that needs information or direction, call me. No, you heard that right. Call me. Don't call my assistant, my secretary. Don't call the front desk. Call me. Oh my God, he's not going to give his phone number out, is it? It's my cell phone number, 214-600-0210. A text is always best first, so I can call you back when I'm free. Listen, I'd give that, it's going to be free all day long. And you can call 100 times a week. If you're really desperate and don't know what to do, we'll guide you through that. They're not going to cost you anything. We're not going to sell you anything. This is me giving back. People think I'm crazy. It's like, well, it's like when they call the company and I'm near the phone, I grab it. I go, hey, Robb Kelly Recovery Group. They go, oh, are you like a brother of Dr. Robb? I say, no, I'm Dr. Robb. No. What do you mean, no? Yeah, I can't believe I'm speaking to you. Dude, I'm the guy in the trenches. I'm the guy that stabbed my wife 3 times one night because she wouldn't let me finish drinking. I'm the one that abandoned these kids. I will fucking never be too fucking posh to answer that phone. Never. And if ever I get like that, it's time for me to start drinking again and moving on, because that's not the way I hold court. I should always be there in the trenches. So don't forget, 214-600-0210. If you're depressed and you're going through it, if you don't know how to get out of it, if you're worried about somebody, if you're a parent, call me. And if you're a guy that wants to get out of it, I'll give you a 10-minute pep talk that will change your fucking life. Believe me, I've done it thousands of times, because you are special, guys. I want to apologize to you if you like that. Someone's put that there, remember? We're born with $1 million minds. Stop hanging around 10-cent minds. Grab life while you can. And I'll tell you this, and this isn't ego, it's fact. You will never get another opportunity like this. So, well, I don't know whether I should call, text. Let's get started together. Let's get something motivated and going and watch your life change. I've worked with 7,000 people there or roundabouts. Not 7 or 70 or 7,000 people over the last 30 years. I want more. So call me. You'll be doing me a favor.
Okay, guys, you heard him. I'm putting your number in the description. Call Dr. Robb, honestly. And this can also be for people who maybe are not down and out, right? They're just struggling with whatever it is. You mentioned earlier, it's not really, it's a symptom, like the substances that they're doing, or you even mentioned before, it could be anything. It could be porn, gaming, like all these different things that people become addicted to. It's a symptom from something deeper. So I'm interested to hear kind of like what you do to dig deeper in that. But I'm also wondering, at what point is an addiction simply a habit? And when does a habit become an addiction? We talked about the habit loops in the brain, and that's how a lot of these things happen. You talked about like habit change. What is the difference, and how can we spot the difference?
Real simple, guys. Real simple. If you have to spend time away from your family, girlfriend, wife, children, to do your thing you're doing, and they are suffering from that, that's an addiction. You really need to look at that. If you're going on vacation with your family and you're looking frantically around for a gym every day, there's something wrong with that. Your body will last 7 days without training. Don't worry, but that turns into an addiction. So anything that's repeated over and over again with the addicted brains are amazing. The addicted brain that doesn't take drugs or alcohol, they're the guys running Apple and Google and Amazon. Remember, the smartest guys in the room, that's the addicted brain. So ease back a little bit. Watch for that, what you're doing. The basal ganglia will get that training going every day, but if it starts to affect other people, just like alcohol, start to affect other people and you're doing this. Like the babies, when you come up from want to spend time with you want to spend 3 hours at the gym and leave your husband at home with the baby and he's been with them all day because he's a house guy. You got to think about that. And that's when it turns into a dangerous addiction.
Yeah. And how can we break those habit loops?
Yeah, well, obviously, if you don't know straight away, call me up and I will explain to you, but I'll just go quickly over it. It's a change of neural pathways are presented when we do something new. So walk into the store with a crazy hat on and purple glasses, that's a new neural pathway. So next time I do that, remember that time I did that, I'm going to do it again. That's a new neural pathway. It's like when you go to a foreign country for like 5 years and you come back and you've not drove a car for 5 years. That neural pathway is decreased down. You've got to start again with it. So let's start new ways, new outlooks. Instead of going to the gym tonight, family, let's all go on like a 2-mile walk. That's where we start. And that's where we start to change the ganglia into thinking, hey, we have different routes here. And then the neural pathways have changed from self-sabotage, flipped over to self-good. Always be giving of yourself and your time. Yeah, get you an hour in a day when it doesn't really hurt anybody. If you're single, great, carry on. But just watch for that habit. If you have the addicted brain, go back through your family history. If there's no mental illness or injuries, we say, in your past, no alcoholism, no drug addiction, in your past generations, go back 4 generations if you can, and there's none of that apparent, you're good. Train every night.
Wow.
Just got to be careful.
And I was going through your site and some of the other things that you do and some of your, I guess you can say, services here. Or maybe it's more of your expertise, but there's these kind of interesting categories I want to bring up that I'd love for you to kind of explain, because these are kind of new ones for me. So NLP, I kind of know, but what is NLP? How can you explain that, and how do you use that in your program?
Full wording is neuro-linguistic program. It's the same things. It's changing neural pathways without you knowing that we're changing habits. It's very, very clever. Quick idea. We took a patient once he came in, he loved Dr. Pepper. Wasn't a fan of Coke, just loved Dr. Pepper. And it was proven a science point. And I got a driver to take him out, and he passed 4 Coca-Cola advertisements. When he got out of the car in the car park and came to the front of the building, there was a can of Coke that was empty that we placed on the side of the wall as he passed. We placed a Coca-Cola flag in the elevator. When he got up to the office, he came in and I said, "What are you having to drink?" He said, "Do you know something? Fuck it, I'll have a Coke." That's how NLP works.
And I guess businesses do that all the time. Marketing departments from companies do this all the time.
Well, what happens is we have a part in the brain called a mirroring part of the brain. And what we reflect back is what we take. Any good salesman will tell you, You go to see a customer, he has coffee, you have coffee. He has chips, you have chips. It's the mirroring part of the brain. It's like, oh my, this sounds good. It's familiar. So when you get back to the office and say, what do I want to drink? You go, what's brain goes bang, prefrontal cortex, Coke. Coke, we're familiar. I know about Coke. Oh yeah, Coke. And that's what he says.
That's amazing. Next one here. What is somatic experiencing techniques?
Somatic experience is listening to your body. Listening to what your body's telling you. You're usually hurting if you're in pain, not physical, but it might be, or emotional pain. Listen to that pain. We identify the pain, we give it a color, and then we take you on this meditation that flushes the color out. So it's really just listening to your body.
Interesting. What are some more examples that people could take and try that for themselves? Maybe let's just use the example of smoking, someone who's trying to quit smoking cigarettes.
So if you say you're smoking 10 times a day and you want to go down to 9, during that one time when you want, go outside, do some box breathing. Box breathing is what the SAS created many years ago when you're in that place where your mind says do something, but it's so dangerous that you can't do it. And you start getting all hyped up. You start breathing like this. It's in for 5 seconds. Hold it for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. Hold it for 5 seconds. Try doing that 4 or 5 times. Okay, ready for this? The urge to smoke will be relieved just for that one time. And then the next week, come off again. Try 2 times outside and do it. And slowly but surely, the neural pathways will change. Your body's getting all full of energy and all the nerve endings and everything are getting this fresh air. Your lungs are expanding because we only breathe like, we don't go. When you fill it up, everything gets like nutrition and life into it. And try that. It's been amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's really cool. Okay, so the next one here I have is brain spotting. One thing I have not heard about for sure.
It's a new technique that I got certified in. The basic thing is it's a little bit like EMDR, but the difference is it goes from the pupil to the subconscious brain. Now I'm going to repeat that. I know we're running out of time, but listen, it goes from the pupil to the subconscious brain. So even you don't know what you're going to say. And we pull that trauma out of you, pull it out of you. Remember when your family did this? Remember what happened here? What happened to your father? Oh my God, yeah, I remember. So we pull that information, then we heal it. We go back and we clear all that stuff up.
Okay, so this is the perfect segue into sort of this last little category I want to get into, because this is where it gets a little bit deeper. You talked about it before. It's really about, these symptoms that are coming back from these deeper traumas, and you kind of just brought it there of like pulling it out. And even you yourself, you're kind of going through something right now. Is it something, if you're interested, if you're like open to talking about it, but I'm wondering how you personally work through these kind of deeper things yourself, and how, you can kind of be an example for others.
Doing your work on yourself is always good. So my father died 2 days ago. I got a call off my sister in England at 7:30 in the morning. Now, she's never called at 7:30, so there's a behavior change. So I knew something's wrong before I pick it up. And the first thing she said is, I have COVID. And I said, I'm so sorry. And then she said, there's something else. And said, Dad just passed 30 minutes ago. You're my first call. When I put the phone down, it was sadness and crying. And we got through that. And then the second day was absolute loss and emptiness and abandonment, which I've suffered from all life. So it's about me already doing my work on myself, knowing that I'm worthy, knowing that this had nothing to do with me, knowing that I can't fix this, but I can stand back as an adult and grieve like I did for 2 days. And then yesterday when I got back to it, it was great. So it happened on Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday. Today's Thursday. So today was great. Wednesday and Thursday are great. So it's just about doing your work on yourself, which I did. I accepted it. I don't go straight for oh my God, I'm going to drink. I'm so traumatized. No, that would be an excuse for me to self-sabotage. So I calmly go through the day and plan out, I need to mourn for this. I need to spend some time crying. I need to get it out to somebody and talk to them about it, and slowly and surely it was healed. And I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that.
I could imagine that it's not something that just happens over a day and it'll become in waves. I'm sure like it doesn't, just a week or a month, like there'll be things that remind you. And like that just brings it back to other things where you have like past traumas that you might even be fully like unaware of on surface level, and then they come back and then they're going to mess with your brain. They're going to mess with your mind. You're going to go back to doing these self-harming behaviors. So I'm wondering, if you have some kind of tools or strategies and how to deal with this kind of stuff, and something you might be thinking about going through your tough time right now as well.
Yeah, it's just self-awareness and calmness. You have to get in a calm place to slow everything down. Use the box breathing, use the pausing when you ever get agitated or upset. And just think of the reality that if there's a death in the family, even if it was immediate and not expected, the belief in they've gone on to a better place is always good. It soothes nerves. And it's another reason, guys. One thing people ask my patients all the time is, if you died tomorrow, what would you create not having told somebody? And everyone says, oh, my wife or my kids, that I love them. And I go, why the fuck have you not told them today? I go, wow, yeah. So, the realization that you were around, you had some amazing times, and who knows what happened. If nothing happens in God's word by mistake, who knows what happens after? And then allow yourself to be upset, allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to do that, because if you don't, you're going to keep that in. And I'm telling you now, that's trauma that will come up later in life and destroy you. So if you don't deal with your trauma, it'll deal with you.
That seems like the deepest, like that might be the core of where all of this stems from. So, again, I appreciate you taking the time to be on this call, even though you were going through a tough time just a few days ago. I even messaged your assistant, making sure that everything was good. I'm like, if he needs to reschedule, I'm totally okay with that. I totally understand. But, the fact that you're still here chatting and sharing all this wisdom and everything is just incredible. I really, really appreciate it. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. I do have some final questions for you. As we're kind of coming up on an hour here, one thing I do want to know is, for you in your industry, what is something that's sort of like new on the fringe that you're learning about now yourself that you find really interesting that might be coming up on people's feeds or thinking about new techniques?
I think there's still research into the subconscious brain regarding addiction and just normal life. It's going to be really exciting going forward. And I think that we're getting more into the body now, more into the central nervous system. I think there's a lot more work that we want to do on that, a lot more scientific work we want to do on it, because I think we've only scratched the surface.
If you had a $1 billion advertising budget to just put a message on every phone, every computer, every billboard, just every person in the world will see this message, what would that be? It
will be okay.
I love that.
That's all. It's like, I hate to spoil the ending for you guys, but it really is going to be okay.
What is, what are some resources that you could point people towards? You already mentioned the best one, which is calling you. Do you want to reiterate your number again for people who might want to call?
So 214-600-0210 is the phone number, my phone number. I spell my name with 2 B's, as you can see on the screen. So robbkelly.com is the website. Jump onto any search engine that you have, Dr. Robb Kelly, all my information will come up. If you jump onto Amazon, there's a book called Daddy, Please Stop Drinking. It's what my eldest daughter said to me, the last thing she said to me. All of the money goes in, not the profits. All of every single dime of that $9 you put in goes back into the community. So do good, go and buy it. If you don't like it, guys, I'm being serious. Call that number, I'll refund you money. Don't worry about that. It's just about giving back to the community. So come find me, guys.
That's amazing. And I want to end this off with just some optimism, positivity. What's something that you're looking forward to right now in life, business, just anything?
I'm actually looking forward in 9 days now. We travel over to the UK. I'll see my daughter. I don't see my youngest daughter. She's still estranged. I see my daughter, who's now my therapist in my Manchester office. I see my granddaughter. I get to see my sister. And we go to the funeral of my father. And I get to stand up and speak to all the family that will be there. What a great man he is, or was.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm so glad you get to do that. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but I'm glad that you have family and everyone's going to be there. And I'm so happy to hear that you're back together with most of your family. It's unfortunate about your second daughter, but hey, like you said, the story's not over just yet, man. So, exactly. I'm still rooting for you.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's great. And once again, just thank you so much for being on this podcast and sharing this wisdom. There's just so much, even just from your story. I think that's the biggest thing to reiterate here is you can be seemingly down and out, in your deepest, darkest pit. You can kind of think that life is going to be over, but you can come through and you can be better than ever. You're the best example of that I've seen so far. So just thank you 100%. For sharing that.
My pleasure. Great to see you, Josh, and we'll speak real soon. Yeah.
Absolutely. Take care. Rob.